So I just bought a kilo of snails off of the internet.
Warning, this video does contain frozen thawed dead snails.
Now you may be wondering, Rebecca, why on earth did you buy snails? Don't you have those giant African land snails? Haven't you been breeding them? Well, yes. Initially, they had a lot of babies, actually so much so I ended up giving quite a few away. And Rex, my pink-tongued skink, by the way that is a snail eater here, he ate quite a few, but obviously being so small he had to eat a lot of them. Then we had a few dud clutches where the eggs didn't hatch out, and then we had, of course, a conflict between the isopods and the snails, where the isopods were essentially eating most of my remaining feeder snails. Then Rex went into brumation, which was fine because he didn't need to eat over that time, and then my giant African land snails hibernated, so of course they weren't breeding. Which brings me to about a week or so ago, when I realised my inventory of frozen giant African land snails had depleted and we were down to only 2 or 3. Now, I did order 90 baby feeder snails in January, but they were pretty much all gone once again because Rex has to eat quite a few of them. They were quite small. And then there was no one else selling them on eBay, which is usually where I look for feeder giant African land snails, apart from one person who was selling 3cm ones, so not very big, for £10 each. Yeah, I wasn't going to pay that. Now, if you do have giant African land snails and they lay eggs, do not freeze those eggs. Please let them hatch, raise them a bit, and if you don't want them, please sell them as feeders. I know that might sound quite harsh, but actually there's definitely a market there, and reptiles like Rex who will only eat snails, and they're very, very much needed. So I was getting pretty desperate. And I certainly didn't want to resort to catching wild snails, as to me wild snails and slugs can potentially carry a lot. I think I'm still traumatized by a news story I saw about a guy who licked a slug and died. Like, that's horrendous, and we don't want to risk that. Then my boyfriend came across this website that organically raises snails, and they are sold to restaurants, they're sold to reptile shops as feeders, and so I jumped at a chance of ordering them. So that brings me to the present day, where I now have 2 boxes of snails in my freezer. I did think originally of keeping a few aside to separately breed them, just so I also had those breeding. However, when they arrived, they were in these boxes already, and before I would accidentally bond with any of them, I just had to put them in the freezer. Okay? Like, I love snails, and so it's difficult, but at the same time, I did choose to buy a reptile that predominantly eats snails. And in my case, that is all he'll eat. Trust me, with these snail numbers depleting, I have tried every single thing that every pink-tongued skink breeder or keeper has suggested, even pinkies. He won't have any of it. And the other thing is, he won't even have boiled apple snails, which is like the human grade ones you can buy from Asian markets. Won't eat them. Will not touch them. So I literally have to give him either live snails or take those live snails and freeze them and then thaw them when he needs them. And also, he's only actually ever had giant African land snails with me, so I don't even know how he'll react to garden snails. So let's head over to Rex and see what he thinks. Okay, so Rex is all the way over there. I've already thawed out one of the snails and taken off its shell, so we're going to see what he thinks of it. Rex. Oh. It's very hard to focus on feeding him whilst also focusing on this being in focus. Here we go. I figured it would be easier to film from this angle. So, let's see what he thinks. Because the last thing we want, right, is he turns down apple snails. He likes giant African land snails. Oh, what is happening now? You cannot say that the certain species of snail matters here, Rex. I have literally the pickiest reptile ever. Let me just see. Maybe I need to put this down somewhere. Maybe the camera is scaring him. Okay, it's 2 days later, and I thought we'd go with a different approach this time. I figured I'd keep the shell on because the garden snails, this species has, I feel like, a weaker shell compared to giant African land snails, and I imagine in the wild they'd have to tackle this anyway, so I figured we'd see how he gets on. Okay, it's a little while later. He's looking pretty happy with himself. The snail, I actually placed the snail on here and it's disappeared. And then when I look down in the soil, over here, there's some bits of shell. So he must have cracked it open and eaten it. So I'll try with the second one. See, one, if he'll take that, and two, if he'll also crack that one open. So from the time lapse you could kind of see Rex accidentally knock the snail off, then go to the bottom of the tank, to the top again, and back and forth. So I thought maybe he'd had it, but I just found it at the bottom of the tank. He was next to it. The only thing I will say is it looks a bit yellow, so I don't know if, like, I mean, it smells fine, it smells like a snail, but I don't know if it's gone off and he doesn't want it, but he's just here, so. Meanwhile, Rex really enjoys, like, coming to the front of the tank. And originally I thought, when we were sort of short on snails, is he hungry? Is he keeps coming to the front because he wants food from me? But actually he has eaten already today. He's been offered a second one, so maybe he just likes to come out every now and again. It's become a bit of a habit actually. Near the end of the day when the lights are going down, he will come out and climb on me. I figured I would crack the snail open a little bit to see if that enticed him. But I will say, compared to the giant African land snails that I've had to crack open before, like the frozen thawed ones, this one did crack a lot easier. So let's see if it comes along. Come on, Rex. I don't know, it might be a bad snail, you know. A moment ago, my dogs came in the room and I let them sort of smell near it. Not too close, but smell near it. And I swear to God, my dog gagged. So maybe it's not a good snail. So overall, I'm glad to say that it seems Rex is happy with these snails. I have been cracking them open a bit because I feel like then he gets more of the smell of them. But it does seem he can actually break the shells easier than he can giant African land snails. And now I actually have a supply that will hopefully last me a while. There's approximately 100 snails for the kilo, so yeah, I should be good for a while, and then hopefully as things warm up my other snails will start breeding, so there's another supply there. Anyway, I thought I'd just bring you along on this snail journey. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, but thank you and goodbye.